Chicken legs. Alona's Way. Review by Cynthia Kros. Cape Town, 2021. In some ways, Mogamad Saley's Chicken Legs is reminiscent of Angela's Ashes, Frank McCourt's classic childhood memoir of poverty and hardship set in Limerick, Ireland. Saley's book is also closely related thematically and stylistically to the late South African poet Chris Van Wyck's hilarious but deeply poignant account of growing up in the coloured group area of Rivoli near Johannesburg titled Shirley, Goodness and Mercy. Both McCourt's eponymous mother Angela in his Pulitzer-winning biography and Van Wyck's mother Shirley are strong women at the centre of their stories. Convinced of his mother's omnipotence, and perhaps being a little afraid as well as grateful that he will never escape her watchful eye. 5-year-old Chris Van Wyck hears the last part of the Old Testament's 23rd Psalms. Surely, goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Saley's mother was evidently of the same mould. The steadfast consolation, even as her son passed through the shadow of the valley of death more than once as he grew up in the tough environments of Salt River and Woodstock in Cape Town. Determined to overcome the physical pain and stigma that was a result of having been badly burnt as a young child, as well as the innumerable obstacles placed in his path by apartheid. Saley's mother, like Van Wyck, seems more or less fearless. She encourages her son against all sorts of odds, and, as a wonderful scene early in the book captures it through an account of her breathlessly speedy driving around the city of Cape Town behind the wheel of the family car, has an acute awareness of racial segregation and its history. But from the road on the mountain, she has a more or less aerial view of it. Even though little N pleads with her from his car seat to slow down, she clearly has no intention of doing so, and thinks that if she would only retake the turn which sent his toes or his puzzle sprawling, they would all come together again. But his mother probably knows better. She understands the larger picture, and she does not seem to waste time regretting the way things are or trying to fix what is broken, only pressing ahead with courage and resolve. Later, she understands why her beloved son is angry and offers no reproaches. Saley uses italicized phrases intermittently interspersed in the main account, which function to reveal the child's interior monologues or, because it is not always clear which, the questions children ask that innocently expose failures of adult logic or their hypocrisy. The adults in N's story, besides his mother, usually fail to answer his questions, and there is a sense of his mounting anger, which might perhaps unsettle the reader. But it would be hard to argue, given that its main target is the appalling quality of colored education and the ubiquity of racial prejudice, that his anger is unwarranted. N's father is a highly skilled electrician denied the possibility of proper certification because of his color. In the early years of N's schooling, one is aware of the simmering discontent among the older politically active children, and in one unbelievably shocking moment, tear gas is discharged by police into the grounds of N's primary school. Ultimately, when he is older, M is to join the protesters, although he always remains a little apart. Meanwhile, his anger against the teachers who are often, although not always, incompetent, lazy and sometimes brutal bowls over, and they cannot restrain him. M's high school English teacher, aka Mr. Femi, is an exception, drawn by Saley with great affection. We can almost hear Mr. Femi's polished English and see his reams of dedicated notes on the setbooks. But what can even Mr. Femi do with the prescribed novel, Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, a perverse 19th-century love story set on the Yorkshire moors? Of course, one would not want to say, as some of the authors of the system of Banter education did, having been made particularly nervous about what rebellious schoolchildren at Lovedale in the Eastern Cape had read into Charles Dickens's Oliver Twist in the mid-1940s, that English classics were bad for black children. But Wuthering Heights for children growing up in impoverished coloured areas in Cape Town in the 1980s One of the sad aspects, for me, in Saley's book is that we see no trace of the children being exposed to any meaningful works of imagination, and, unsurprisingly, Anne's experience of school history is also completely dismal. Saley brilliantly evokes the schools that Em attends as a microcosm of the system of education that was designed to keep children of color from competing with their white counterparts, and one could almost think to habituate children not classified as white to constant squalor and degradation. In a description of Em's first school, Saley implicitly draws out the irony of the teachers compelling the Muslim children to undergo ritual Friday cleansing in the stinking toilet block. Em moves through this world that is often dirty and broken down and is frequently the object of the random brutality that this kind of environment seems to breed. Violence is the only way for many of his peers to make a claim to selfhood or to a place in a world that is deliberately indifferent to them. Yet, there are also instances of tenderness and friendship. Em is not always certain which one to expect: an unprovoked blow or an invitation to talk or even to kiss. Girls generally like Em, and he strikes up happy friendships with several, although his standards for the girlfriend he is looking for as puberty strikes, as opposed to friends who are girls, one might argue, are high. Besides having certain criteria for the physical appearance of his ideal girlfriend, he wants to be able to talk to her. Em has been badly scarred and is ashamed of his burnt chicken legs, yet he drives them to perform in athletics. And he also undergoes a rigorous self-taught program of physical training. He excels in mathematics. He is a good student despite the frequently terrible teaching and the irresponsible absenteeism of his matric maths teacher. He ends up as a first-year electrical engineering student, overawed by the magnificence of the University of Cape Town's Jameson Memorial, now Sarah Bartman Hall, set against the looming face of Devil's Peak. And here we must leave him, in expectation of a sequel. Despite being an autobiography, Chicken Legs is written in the third person. In Saley's later life, he was diagnosed as being on the autistic spectrum. The use of the third person and the italicized inner monologue referred to already give us a sense of him being slightly removed, of being apart, of being a conscientious observer, of being a loner charting his own way. As the subtitle of the book suggests, somehow, the reader is privileged to stand alongside Em and, for the duration of the memoir, is allowed to read his thoughts and, in the process, comes to realize that it is the world that is at a remove. This unfathomable world that, on the most arbitrary of criteria, tries to deny the humanity of most of its citizens. I started my review with some comparative remarks about the fine memoirs by McCourt and Van Wyck. But Chicken Legs also has something entirely unique and enriching about it. I strongly recommend it for anyone who wants to understand what it was like to grow up on the wrong side of apartheid, but perhaps all sides were the wrong ones. The legacies that remain and the courage it takes to reveal one's scars and still to run the best race possible.